Simon used the word cutting insight. If you've been around the agile space at all, you've heard these words, self-organizing. People have been to many talks talking about self-organizing teams. How do we create them? So what on earth could we be talking about here to move beyond that? Isn't self-organizing teams the be-all and end-all of agile? You know, once we have these, we have reached nirvana. There is no more beyond this. Be prepared. What's the laughter about?
No, I'm just trying to prepare myself.
Prepare for what?
I don't know.
Yeah, very good. He's on the right track. Be prepared to perhaps be challenged, confronted, invited. Not that I'm demanding that you see things the way I do, but to just open yourself at the possibility that the way we're practicing Agile has some room for improvement. And specifically around self-organizing teams, that there's something perhaps not working as well as we'd hoped it might work for, and that we might, through a deeper understanding of what we're actually seeking here, move beyond this. So I'm Michael K. Sahota. I'm a certified enterprise coach with the Scrum Alliance. I wanted to share a bit about myself so you have some understanding of where this information is coming from. I actually started out went through engineering and started working in artificial intelligence robotics of how do we build complex autonomous agents or robots that really can adapt to their environment. So it's actually very similar to the theme that we're actually speaking about now. And I started working as a software developer. I moved from academics into development, so I know what it's like to deliver software. So I got very involved with Agile. So I know what it's like as a developer, architect. I moved into management roles, director of software development, vice president R&D. I know what it's like to get Agile working from inside the system. Then I worked as a trainer, coach, working from outside to understand how can we actually unlock the full success of Agile. And I spent the last 10 years looking at culture and leadership to get a deeper understanding of what Agile is really about, as well as understand how it fits in with this larger world of creating organizational success. So that's the frame that I'm coming from. Our organization, Agilitrix, which is actually shifting to Shift 314, what we're about, and this kind of gives you a sense of my purpose, my vision of where our organization is we unleash the evolutionary capabilities of people and organizations. So we want to introduce this ability for people to continue to evolve themselves, and collectively for people working in an organization to evolve the organization, to realize the extraordinary. That's what we're about. Through a shift in mindset and practices, we enable new ways of working. We're just in Agile, this new way of working, but that actually requires an inner shift and an unlock of our evolutionary capabilities as a human being. So we're going to explore a little bit about that through self-organizing teams. So we're going to start with what you know. And we're going to ask you to just really look at your practical experience with the term autonomous self-organizing teams. Has that been helpful or harmful, or a bit of mixed? So we're going to ask you, this is a meetup, so this is your chance to meet up with people that you have not met before. So I'm going to ask you to stand up, get into, what do I say here? Small groups, so that's like 2, 3, 4 people, and discuss, is this a useful term or is this harmful? Everyone, go. Stand up, get into groups. Is this a helpful term or harmful or a bit of both? Okay, please go back to your chair and remain standing. Do not sit down, just remain standing. We're gonna do a listen to the system using your body. So what I'm gonna ask you to do is, if you believe that the concept of autonomous self-organizing teams is harmful, please sit down. Please sit down if you think it's a harmful concept. Oh, so that's so good. Please sit down if you think it's mixed, that it's partly helpful, partly harmful. Please sit down if you think it's mixed. So if you're remaining standing, you believe it's just a helpful concept, correct? Oh, one person. There's hope for Agile. Well, the hope for Agile is not in trying to, you can sit down now, thank you. Sorry, so bad, so sorry. The hope for Agile is not in trying to rescue this concept. The hope for agile is finding the truth of what works and adapting. Right? Remember, agile is about adapting, responding to change instead of following a plan. So let's look at some of these adaptations. So agile, we could arguably say, how does agile do with supporting teams operating a better way? If we're giving agile a report card, I'd probably actually give it like a pretty good rating. What about how is it doing for managers? How is agile doing for organizational systems? So if we're giving agile a report card right now, what kind of report card would we give it? Well, I'd give teams a green. We're doing a pretty good job with teams. I'd have to say that. Around the world, I'm seeing very good things happen just at a team level. But what about managers in the organization? Well, organization, I can't say orange. There's a lot of challenge out there. There's a lot of conflict, a lot of problems with how we're approaching agile. And what about managers? Whoops, okay, all right, that's where agile is really dropping the ball. Yeah? You guys have seen this a bit? Yeah. Just raise your hand if this kind of reflects your experience right now. Yeah? Anyone else out there? Okay, all right. Thank you. So let's dive into this. What's really going on? We're giving you here what we call a fundamental rethink of agile so you can be successful. Having a lot of experience trying to get agile to work, it's like, ooh, well, there's some important pivots, some important learnings, some important shifts needed to create success. So we've all heard of autonomous self-organizing teams. So raise your hand if people talk about autonomous self-organizing teams in your environment. People use this phrase. They talk about autonomous self-organizing teams. This is part of the language, discussion, so on. Okay. We're going to give you now our professional opinion of it. It's kind of funny, and this is not a laughing matter. This is actually more, I'd put in the category of a great tragedy. A great, great tragedy. Let's imagine each row on each side is a team. So if we're one organization, we'd have, what, about, 24 teams. Yes? What happens when we tell each team to be autonomous and optimize locally? To focus, you focus on your backlog, you focus on your backlog. What happens when we optimize locally? What happens to the global optimum of our whole company? What happens? It falls. This is the simple truth from Lean. When we optimize locally, the global optimum falls. So telling teams they're autonomous and they should optimize locally is an organizational sub-optimization. There's a word we use to describe it, it's unintelligent, right? It's not going to serve organizational high performance. It's good to optimize locally and create little local products, but it doesn't optimize the whole system. So autonomous self-organizing teams points us in the wrong direction. The other thing is, I could ask you who actually has a really autonomous team, and I know some people may put up their hands. But most people or teams, they're told they're autonomous, but what happens to them? They start making decisions. And then what happens to them? They find out there's actually an invisible electric fence, and they go bzzz, and they go, oh, we weren't really allowed to make that decision. And their psychological safety plummets, and they no longer have that sense of, oh, we're really allowed to make decisions. Besides, most teams can make the best decisions not independently, but by working together, using the collective wisdom of the whole organization. So we don't even want to tell teams to try to optimize locally. It doesn't lead to success. The other aspect is self-organizing. Teams that are self-organizing, well, that's great if you have people who are really mature, really responsible. Then telling they're self-organizing, you're going to get pretty good outcomes. Raise your hand if you've seen a team told to be self-organizing, but they weren't ready for it. Raise your hand if you've seen that. You see that that's why it's red, it's a death trap. It is a lethal death trap. It might be a beautiful star on the horizon. Eventually we may one day reach something close to this. I wouldn't say exactly this, but something in this direction. It might be a beautiful star on the horizon, but it's a horrible, horrible starting place. I'm going to invite you to upgrade your mental concepts and your language to something healthier. Teams. Teams are good. It's good to have teams, but interrelated, responsible teams. Interrelated, what does that mean? It means that we understand that we're working together as part of a larger whole. We don't think we're autonomous. We say, oh, we're going to work locally and do the best we can to optimize globally. So we collectively work as intelligent teams working in a larger ecosystem. That's what interrelated means. Responsible, this goes with self-organization. When you have a group of highly responsible individuals and you give them higher autonomy, amazing things happen. When you have a team of people who don't have psychological safety, have lower responsibility, are not highly motivated, it's a total disaster. Jumping to self-organizing, we can call it's a big bang approach to sharing power. Right? We're not sharing power iteratively and incrementally. We're taking a big jump, and we're hoping everything just works out fine. But the truth and the reality is it doesn't. And teams aren't really autonomous anyway, so we're deceiving them. So when we focus instead on how do we create teams that are interrelated and responsible, it's a much healthier starting place. And it's focused on growing the team's responsibility, growing the responsibility on those teams. And we're going to talk about what does that actually look like, what does it take. But before we do that, let's do some fact checking. Let's go to the source. Is autonomous in the Agile Manifesto? Yes or no? No, it is not in the Agile Manifesto. So how did it get there? I suggest it was bolted on by anti-disestablishmentarian fluffy bunny agilists who hate hierarchy and oppression, and they hate it so much they demand autonomy. Because it's not part of the Agile Manifesto. The closest we get, well, actually, is self-organizing in the Agile Manifesto? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? Yes? Sort of, not really. Let's look. Start here. This is what the manifesto says. Build projects. This is the manifesto here. Build projects around motivated individuals. So this is a requirement. We need the motivated individuals, right? Otherwise, it's not going to work. Give them the environment and support they need and the trust to get the job done. But we want to start with motivated individuals. If in your environment you don't have highly motivated individuals, you're not meeting the preconditions for using Agile. You're missing out an important precondition. And they say end here. This is the ending point. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. But this is the ending point. It's saying, oh, if you want the best architectures, then you need self-organizing teams. But to get that, you need the motivated individuals. So there's nothing in the manifesto that says that step one, create self-organizing teams, or autonomous self-organizing teams. That's a total misunderstanding. There's nothing in the manifesto that tells you to start there. It says that at the end, we may experience that and some beauty may come from that, but it's not saying that's the starting place. So, yeah, it's the ending point. But what does Scrum say about self-organizing teams? Surely Scrum, well, what does Scrum say? Yes or no? Scrum, come on, you guys know Scrum Guide? Oh, you guys are not so sure now. Okay, it's looking dangerous. I'm not going to say yes. I think it's yes, but I'm not going to say that because it's a trap. Well, let's look together. So I'm worried, okay, what's the psychological safety here? I put people into fear. They're not ready to raise their hands. I'm so sorry. Let's look at the Scrum Guide. The Scrum Guide, I'm pulling this, actually like this quote of the Scrum Guide. Cross-functional teams, this is the requirement for Scrum. Cross-functional teams have all the competencies needed to accomplish the work without depending on others not part of the team. All the competencies. What does that really mean? Usually people read that to mean, oh, they have all the skills. We have some developers, we have some testers, some people with some domain knowledge and business knowledge. Well, what are the capabilities needed around people having a high level of personal responsibility and motivation? Is that part of the capabilities needed? Yeah. Do you think we can create success without the capabilities of being motivated and responsible at an individual level? There's no way. And a deeper reading of the Scrum Guide, we see that people who take a high level of personal responsibility, who act like adults, is a requirement of Scrum in order to create cross-functional teams or self-organizing teams. So even Scrum, when we look at the root of it, we're missing out on the preconditions Scrum tells us that we need. Right? So you're getting to this. So Agile, it's about the people? What? What do you mean Agile is about the people? What are you talking about? Right, so the prerequisites for independence are usually missing, or they're not fully realized. So the question is, what are we doing to realize those prerequisites? What are we doing to support people? Let's go into that. But before we do that, we're going to ask you to stand and discuss in triads. Triads means group of 3, and I'm going to ask you to meet new people because this is a meetup. And I'm going to ask you, what do you think so far? What metaphor will better support growth in your environment? So just be very practical. In your environment, what metaphor will help the people you're working with grow and evolve? Is it interrelated responsible teams, as I'm suggesting? Or is it autonomous self-organizing teams? And why? Which one do you think will help more? And why do you think it'll help more? So 1, 2, 3, go. Get into triads and discuss. Please return to your seats and remain standing in front of them. Just remain standing in front of your seat. And we're going to do this the other way around. Remain standing, please. Remain standing. So we'll flip this around. We'll start with autonomous self-organizing teams. So if you believe autonomous self-organizing teams is the better metaphor to support growth in your environment, please sit down. If you believe autonomous self-organizing teams are a better metaphor, so we have some people sitting down. Thank you. Please sit down if you think it's kind of hard to tell. It's kind of mixed. You're not really sure. Please sit down if you're not really sure. And so everyone remaining standing thinks interrelated responsible teams will probably be more helpful to help growth in your environment. Okay, great, thank you. Take your seats. So now we'll just get a shout out from the audience just to share why. What are your thoughts? Either in favor of the shift or against the shift. Like I just really want to create some dialogue and some sharing. So who'd like to share first?
I think in my opinion, the interrelated responsibilities is actually driving the autonomous and self-organizing teams. If you have these self-organizing teams, other way around, you won't drive the interrelated responsible teams. So that's why the first one is kind of better than the second one.
Oh, that's a very interesting insight. So he's saying, well, if we focus on interrelated teams, that'll lead us towards having the creation of teams that are responsible and can self-organize in the future and can have higher levels of autonomy. So it'll lead to this. So it's kind of like a good, better starting place for your organization. Great, thank you. Simon, do you want to say something?
Thanks. I was just thinking interrelated responsible teams is about who you are. So it's like a being statement almost, whereas autonomous self-organizing is like a doing statement. And that's what I wanted to reflect that.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So he's saying that autonomous self-organizing is more about the structures, more like a structural change, whereas interrelated and responsible is more about the being, right? We talk about this doing agile versus being agile. So one's focused more about the being, about the essence of agile that can lead us to success, something like that. Yeah, interesting. Really great insights. Other thoughts or challenges? We'll go here and then here. All right.
Our conversation actually led into, is there a third option that could be more helpful metaphor? Should I share?
Yes, please.
So together with my team, we agreed that maybe if you're thinking metaphor, thinking of rather than teams, like cells that are part of the tissue, and whilst they work separately, they contribute to the same tissue that is part of the same body. And then this new term came up that we thought it was quite important, which is, but they must have a purpose. So they should know what is their role within the body or tissue. And then we still within the analogy, it's like, what if they have the wrong purpose and they become cancer? They're really bad for it. Yeah, we should think about the vision as well, so that should be clear, so the team knows how to perform.
So what's the new phrase?
Cells with purpose.
Cells with purpose. Whoa, cells with purpose. Okay, so we have the new improved version. All right, thank you. And that was a lot that you covered in that short time. Like holy moly. All right, last share.
Yeah, just one point about if you look at the words and the grammar of it and think means if you're someone new who's coming in and you're told you're part of an autonomous, self-organising team, it kind of feels like, go away and do that and don't bother me. Whereas an interrelated, responsible team, you are encouraged then to share what you're doing and talk to other people.
Great, thank you. So again, I just want to clarify. I'm not bashing Agile or the history of Agile. Agile is extraordinary. We have a very deep tradition to be very proud of. What I'm talking about is some subtle shifts in our language to unlock the full success that we hope for through Agile. That's what I'm speaking about here, of creating these subtle shifts in our language to orient our perceptions and how we see reality to unlock greater success. So it's the refinement rather than the rejection of Agile. So where are we going? So now what do we do? Now what happens with our interrelated responsible teams? How do we understand, how do we go on that journey? What does that journey even look like? Well, organizations want to change usually because they want to survive in the VUCA world. They're facing increasing business challenge. They understand that the market's changing very quickly. They want to be able to adapt to the changing needs of their customers and the market competition, right? To develop new capabilities they don't have right now. So looking beyond teams, we're looking at not just teams, but organizational management. Like how are we creating, through interrelated responsible teams, organizational management approach to autonomy and self-organization. So if we still want this higher levels of autonomy, higher levels of self-organization, if that's our star on the horizon, and we're reaching it through interrelated responsible teams, what does our organizational management approach look like? How do we know Agile's done a great job with teams, but what if we bring in the organizational perspective, the management perspective? What does that start to look like? When we look at it, teal is the new Agile. If you've looked at the book Reinventing Organizations, who's seen this or heard about this work, right? So essentially like, go Agile, we want to become Agile, great. No, we want to go teal. We want to go teal. Teal's the new Agile. We want to become a teal organization because they got the highest performance and we want the highest performance here, so we want to go teal. Essentially it's like a really cool idea. Independently all over the world, across all different industries, across the globe, at different sizes of companies, people have independently co-evolved this teal way of working with shared power, decentralized network, self-management, emergence, wholeness, people who are valued, mind, body, heart, and spirit. This has been co-created and reinvented simultaneously all over the world as a much more capable organizational way of functioning. So what does this tell us? Shared power, decentralized network, self-management, not even self-organization, beyond self-organization, self-management. What does it take to actually create that? What kind of shifts are needed within our organizational system to create this kind of organization? So really the interesting thing is, well, how do we get to teal? Our view is that a mindset shift is required to support teal. We say a new way of being enables a new way of working, and shifting mindset is key. So just like with Agile, we talk about doing Agile and being Agile, or the Agile mindset, this is the essence of what we're looking for, whether you call it Agile mindset, teal mindset. We're looking for a mindset shift in people to unlock these new ways of working. So how do we get there? Well, the answer is you start where you are, right? Where do you start? Well, I want to start where I want to be. No. You got to start where you are, honestly looking at what's happening with the people in your organization. Agile is about people, and it's about evolving people. We're going to go into that. Yeah, so you start where you are and evolve from there. How does this look like at an organizational level? We're looking at what Agile can hope and promise to give us. If we look at an organization, this blue line represents the current operating characteristic. These are all the people, the workers, the leaders, and so on. And what happens in the organization is a reflection of the behaviors of all the people. When all the workers and all the managers show up a certain way, have certain behaviors, we get a certain kind of outcome. Usually people are not as satisfied. We're not as slow. We're slower than we'd like to be. We're not as responsive to market changes. We're not able to adapt as quickly as we want. And they say, oh, but we want to be different, so how do we evolve? right? We'd like to have a nimble, agile organization. We'd like to have business agility. We'd like to have people who are showing up with new behaviors and are much more adaptable. That's what we'd like to have for the future. And what this requires is growth. It requires growth of both the workers evolving and the leaders evolving. This is what's actually required to take us towards our destination. So teal is not very complex. When everyone operates in a teal way, which is taking full responsibility for behavior and acting like adult, we have a teal organization. The limit of why your organization is not teal is because everyone's not taking full responsibility for their behavior. They're not learning and growing. They're not fully acting like an adult. We're hitting our leadership edges, and we're hitting the limit of how we can show up. So our model is, well, no one gets left behind. So what I'd like you to do is discuss in triads, this group of three, so your next chance to meet new people, introduce yourself. Well, my question is, who's getting left behind in your organization? And what would happen if the focus was on the evolution of people? So instead of like spending all our time talking about processes and practices and getting this product delivered, what if we shifted our focus to the essence of Agile about what it's all about the people? What would that look like? So that's the second part of the question. So the first question, who's getting left behind on this journey towards a new way of being, a shift in mindset? All right, 1, 2, 3, go. Introduce yourself to new people and explore. So let's start with the first question. We'll just get share some from the audience. Maybe we'll just ask you to just stand up and shout out. Who is getting left behind your organization? Who? Top management? Middle management, leadership? Everybody. We've been focusing on the wrong things. Oops.
Non-coding architects.
Pardon?
Non-coding architects.
Yes. Non-coding architects. Yeah. Sorry, what?
Saturn and Ivory Tower.
They sit in Ivory Tower, yeah. HR.
Agile coaches.
Finance.
Agile coaches. Yeah. Yeah. So what would happen if the focus was on the evolution of people? How would things be different in your organization? What does that even mean? Like, how do we focus on the evolution of people? Like, what is that about? What could it be about? So let's explore that. So what is the shift? What is the mindset shift? What is this all really about? Well, we're journeying from the word autonomous to the word responsible. So what body of knowledge can we look about whether people are showing up in a responsible way? And one very powerful source of research is McGregor's theory X, theory Y. Raise your hand if you've heard of this model before. Right? This is a very powerful model that gives us very specific, direct guidance. And it says, well, people who tend to be more like theory X may dislike work, are ambitious, and avoid responsibility, and motivated, and so on. And people who show up more as theory Y may take an instant work, may be ambitious, seek and accept responsibility, are intrinsically motivated, have self-direction, self-control. So ultimately, the journey we're on is about looking at how people around you act. So think about it. How do people around you act? Are they more like theory X? Are they more like theory Y? Does it depend on the day? Does it depend on the time of day? Are they better after their first coffee? Right? Think about it seriously. Like, what's going on with people, how people are showing up? If this is the minimum table stakes for creating high performance, that people are showing up, engaged, and motivated, where are the people in your organization? The other question is, like, how do you act? Like, because of cognitive bias, we all think we're better than we actually are. But really, like, where are the places where we show up like theory X? I'm not asking you to admit it to anyone else, just maybe to yourself. It's okay, you're normal if you're not showing up theory Y all the time. Sometimes, I don't know if about you might feel unmotivated. You just don't want to do that thing that you're supposed to do or you need to do. And, maybe there's that time you avoided responsibility. They're asking for someone to volunteer for something and you probably could do a good job at it, but you just don't want to do it. Or you're ambitious. You know, you look at it and say, things are kind of good enough here. And there might even be that moment where you go, oh, you dislike work. Oh, that meeting, that person, that situation. Like, think about it. In your week, you may be showing up a bit more theory X than you acknowledge. That's our work. Inspiring leaders, how do you think they show up? Theory Y. Motivated, ambitious all the time. And our work is to overcome our confirmation bias. Right? Who's heard of confirmation bias? Right? This tells us we know psychologically the way our mind is structured or defected, whatever you want to call it. We think we're smarter than we are. We think we're more correct than we are. And we think we're much more theory Y than we actually are. Right? That's the truth of what confirmation bias tells us. So all the time, instead of worrying about other people, that's what coaching's for, right? Coaching's for helping other people go from theory X to theory Y. We're gonna fix all those other people, right? Because they need help, right? But like actual like us leading and us embracing the agile mindset means we start with ourselves. We focus on how we can show up more effectively each day. So this is really the journey. Evolving people is the real goal. This is the secret. If we want to have interrelated, responsible people, it's about helping everyone evolve from theory X to theory Y more fully each day. And each little baby step we take to showing up more theory Y each day, it's going to lead to greater success, or greater ability for our team to be responsible as each individual acts more responsible. Newsflash, responsible teams come from responsible people. When we have a group of really responsible people, we're going to get a really responsible team. That's the connecting up the dots. So that's why each person's evolution is essential. And I said, including the architects, you know, we can't leave them behind, right? Now, when we look at the workplace, we see that workers are disengaged. They're showing up as theory X in many, many cases. It's massive human waste, massive economic waste. Industry research, this is from Deloitte, says that employee engagement, culture, and leadership are the #1 challenges. Like, we're facing in industry huge, huge challenges that all center around people not showing up and taking responsibility. And this is where people are getting left behind. The research shows we are leaving people behind all over the place, left, right, and center. Now, I just realized that I wanted to have a handout, but I forgot to get it printed out. Therefore, the handout is not physically here, so I can't do the exercise with the handout. What's that? Yes, I know. So right now I'm responding to change instead of following the plan that I failed to execute. All right, so I have a few more minutes before I have to figure out the solution. All right, so use 12 scientifically proven questions to measure engagement. So there's a fascinating book. Raise your hand if you read this book. Anyone read this book? One person? Okay. This is like an extraordinary book. The title alone is very, very informative. The title of the book is First, Break All the Rules. Well, why do we need to break all the rules? Because the rules of business as usual are low performance. If you're doing anything remotely resembling business as usual with different departments, with a hierarchy, with teams, with all this sort of stuff, that's low performance, right? It turns out, and this is the subtitle, what the world's greatest managers do differently. And you know what the world's greatest managers do differently? Does anyone know?
Break all the rules. Break all the rules.
Yeah, break all the rules. It turns out that they treat people well. I know it may sound crazy, but they treat people well, and they're focused on the learning and growth of their people, and they actually grow themselves as well. Now, it's fascinating that the single biggest determiner of performance in your organization is not your process. It's not whether you're using agile or waterfall. It's actually your manager. That's what the research in this book shows and tells, and it goes into very different. Now you're saying, well, how long has this book been out for? It's been out for 20 years. Why hasn't the world changed? Because we haven't been focusing on people. We haven't been focusing on evolving people to have the right skills, have the right mindset, have the shift in consciousness to show up this way. Yeah. The other secret is not really about employee engagement. That's what it's often misunderstood to be. That's what it's titled. It's actually measuring organizational performance. It's actually measuring whether or not you have high performance. So, handout. What questions does your organization do well at, and what questions need more attention? So I'm going to see if I can pull this up on the screen. Let's see what happens. It's only one page. Okay, all right, this is not working. All right, so I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do the first few questions. We're not going to do all the questions. They're only questions 1 through 8. So you can read these? This is readable? Okay, we'll do questions 1 through 8. Except we're missing a word. Hold on. There we go. All right, what I want you to do is look through... Sorry. All right, thanks for your help with that, by the way. That's called responding to change over following a plan. All right. This is a test to see how agile I am, right? I hope I passed. All right, so what we're doing now is I'm going to ask you to look at these, and with your neighbor, you can just stay seated and just talk to your neighbor. Which questions is your organization doing well at? And which questions need more attention? All right, so just take a look through this. Just read first. When you finish reading through these, and you and your neighbor already discussed, just turn to your neighbor and start discussing. If your neighbor's busy talking to the other person, stand up and find someone. All right, but just go through this. What's your organization doing well at? And which ones need more attention? Just read through this and then share with your neighbor. All right. Oh, people started ending already. Okay, so what these questions do is they tell us, scientifically proven through research, through an aggregate of like many, many companies, millions of questions, what are the questions that are most important to focus on as a manager or coach to look after people, to create an environment where people can grow, to evolve, to be fully supported. So what insights do you have from looking at this? What did you discover about your organization? Let's take a few shares. Sorry.
Hit that checklist.
What's that? Say.
That not a lot of the organizations meet that checklist.
Yeah, so a lot of organizations don't really get like a big yes for each of these questions, right? Which is a tragedy, because like, look at the first one. Do I know what's expected of work? Come on, isn't that a gimme? Like, isn't that kind of like a free one that where people should know what they're supposed to be? I mean, everybody, like, right? Everybody wants to be successful. The organization wants to be successful. Why don't people know what they're supposed to do? Like, it's a tragedy in a way, right? You have people who come to work that want to contribute but don't fully understand or know how. Or even this next one, do I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right? What are people asking for? They're just saying, well, can you make sure that I can do my job? You're asking me to come to work. Can I just do my job? Can you just give me the supports I need? But how often do we not have that? You know, if we have distributed teams, there's no money to fly people together to work together and solve the really hard problems, and we have all these challenges, we don't have the right tooling. People are just trying to do their jobs. This is how to look after people. This is how to create a space where it creates a context where we're inviting people to show up as their best selves. It creates a context that's inviting people to shift from more theory X to more theory Y. So these questions give you a powerful way to focus on the underlying elements that will allow and foster success. It's really an extraordinary technology. And actually, Jazz from is going to print a few out, so they'll be sitting there on your way out. So you can take these with you. Okay. So everything we're talking about is contained in a model we call the evolution of high performance. So you may have heard of it before as consciously approaching agile. And ultimately, what we're interested in is we'd like to create an organization that can thrive in the VUCA world, that can respond to the complexity, embrace uncertainty, roll with what's happening. And that's why we're very interested in agile, DevOps, and all these new ways of working. Because these new ways of working, lean startup, all these different approaches allow us to thrive in this VUCA world. But, well, these new ways of working, have you noticed that it's a little bit hard to get these new ways of working actually fully working? That they seem really good on paper, but when you actually get down to the reality of what's happening in your organization, there's a bit of a gap. Well, that's because we're missing an important precondition, which is when we have a healthy organizational environment, this is actually the guaranteed way to get these new ways of working. Here we go. when you have a healthy organizational environment and culture, people just go, oh yeah, this new way of working, cool, let's do that. And they suddenly start performing better. Most of us aren't in that situation. Most of us don't have a supportive organizational environment and culture. We don't have a context that actually fully supports these new ways of working. So when we try to introduce them, we're constantly fighting with the organizational environment and the culture because we don't have all the prerequisites we need. When we dig deeper, well, who are the people responsible for and creating the organizational environment and culture? Who's responsible for what's happening in the organization? It's the leaders. Leaders are the ones who, through their behavior, what they notice, what they don't notice, how they act, how they respond to things, what they promote and so on, are the ones creating the culture. They're the ones making the decisions about what's happening in the environment, what investments are made to create a healthy environment for people, what things to say yes to, what things not to invest in. So they're the ones actually who have the capability to create a healthy organizational environment that would allow all these new ways of working to unlock. And all of us, to create a high-performance organization, require leaders at all levels. So each of us, it's not just about us being a leader and evolving ourselves and shifting more from theory X to theory Y, but it's about all of us, step one, putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first and working on ourselves for how we show up. Then it's about helping others. So we'd argue when we collapse everything, this whole journey about moving to Agile, it's all about people. It's about each of us evolving ourselves from more theory X to more theory Y. Once we've gone on that journey, then we can help others along the journey. Then we can offer a hand to help others once we've done our work and done our own personal growth and our own personal evolution. So that's the invitation of the evolution of high performance. It's kind of a simple recipe. It actually turns out it works incredibly well. And it's only for those who really are interested in creating the extraordinary, that are really interested in creating high performance. Because it's not easy, right? I mean, usually it's much easier to work on it's much easier to work on the organizational system and let's get together and figure out how to improve it. It's much easier to coach others and help them become better. The place that we often underinvest in is our own growth, our own evolution. And of course, that's because of our cognitive bias. We think we're more evolved than we actually are, right? So when we remove the cognitive bias, we understand this is the starting place of the journey towards high performance. We start with ourselves. And as we do that, we can help others along the journey. And then together, we can create a healthier organizational environment and culture. And then together, introduce these new ways of working and actually have them succeed and unlock and give us the success we hope for. So it all starts with evolving people. So how can you inspire others? We're going to give you 3 quick keys to unlock your performance. So some very practical things. Number 1, focus on your behavior. I guarantee this. If you go into work tomorrow looking at the places, just keep this in the back of your mind, where are the places where you're shying away from theory Y and you're leaning a bit into theory X? If you just every day focus on that and start growing through your behavior, you're going to see a big shift. And I know it can be hard out there. I'm not under any illusions of what your work environment may be like. There was one time where I was working at a telco, and it was a really challenging environment. And I found myself theory X. And then I looked at myself and I said, well, Michael, what are you doing? If you don't get your game on, you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So I said to myself, well, hey, Michael, either get your game on or get out of the game. Get out of that gig, work somewhere else. And you know what I did? I got my game on. No matter what was going on, I showed up as theory Y. I remember this. And then a few months later, I was going I went to the VP and I said, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here anymore. How am I really adding value? He goes, Michael, don't you understand? I go, well, no, I don't understand. He goes, Michael, you're giving people hope. And I was doing much more practically just than giving people hope. But that was the core thing. I was giving people hope and helping those people who wanted to grow become better at what they did, to grow through their challenges, to learn and evolve, right? So that's the impact we can have, is to inspire others. But it starts with ourselves. When we can show up resourced, motivated, enthusiastic, not kind of a fake way, but a real genuine way, that's what's going to help pull up others. So yeah, focus on your behavior. So this means, what does it mean? Don't worry about anyone else. Don't worry about your teammates. Don't worry about the leadership, what they're doing. Focus on you. Focus on your behavior and how you're showing up. This is a huge secret, and it will allow you to unlock your performance. Number 2, admit errors. Yeah, here's Homer. Right? Like, we can be terrified of this, but it's really very simple. It's like, oh, whoops, I made a mistake, right? But the truth of the matter is, how good are you admitting errors? Most of us beat ourselves up and give her, and there's a little critic inside going, right? Working through that. Because if we can start admitting errors, then we can actually ask for help, and we can have other people admitting their errors. And if we all admit our errors, we can figure out solutions to our problems much quicker, and we're going to start connecting and with each other as human beings. Right? This is what we mean by evolving yourself. Like, it's not like admitting errors, like really? But again, keep in mind, you may not want to do that out loud. Admit errors at least to yourself. If your environment's not safe, please don't tell anyone, oh, my Michael said to admit my errors. And no. I don't want anyone here to get fired, okay? So if it's safe in your environment, you can admit them out loud, but at least admit them internally. Say, oh yeah, that didn't turn out the way I did. And number 3 is ask for help. Asking for help is very powerful. It's a sign of humility. It's a sign of acceptance of reality, saying, I can't do this alone. Can you please help me with this? It's a way to build very powerful relationships. And it requires, okay, well, I don't feel comfortable asking for help. Well, think about it. If people are not asking for help on your team, or your organization, what's going on? It means that people are staying stuck. Right? We want to get people unstuck and being productive as soon as possible. So these are 3 very simple things to focus on. Where are you showing up theory X, theory Y? Where are you, where's my brain? Admitting errors and asking for help. Okay. So, Star Wars came out, so I'll just go back to a long time ago in Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope. What we're inviting you through this talk is a new hope. And essentially, it's how you here in this room can create success without budget, without authority, or without approvals. You have full ownership and control of your life. You can do this. You can create the change that you want to see in the world. The only thing stopping you is, yes, the only thing stopping you is you. It's absolutely possible. It just requires an inner shift. Like, do I want to work on myself to create profound change? If agile and creating the success of interrelated responsible teams requires everyone responsibility, who better person for me to start working on than me? Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. This is not trite advice. It's not some inspirational poster you look at. This is daily practical guidance. If you want to create an agile organization, and you want to create interrelated responsible teams that are very capable, very responsible, that requires responsible people, which starts with ourselves. We're giving you a fundamental rethink of agile so you can be successful. We can call this Wave 2 Agile. Wave 1 is all about the techniques, the practices. Wave 2 is the evolution of Agile, the change we've been waiting for, which is focusing on the mindset, or the being Agile, which is all about the people. A new way of being enables a new way of working. Shifting mindset is key. This is why we talked about this inner shift in how we're showing up in our being. Here's the math. Responsible people create responsible teams. Responsible teams creates higher autonomy, right? We don't want to give higher autonomy to teams that aren't responsible. We want responsible teams. As teams become more responsible, we give them more autonomy. It's an incremental sharing of power as people demonstrate more responsibility, right? We don't do this big bang, oh, you guys are autonomous now. That doesn't work. We want to give teams increased autonomy as they're more responsible. And higher autonomy, then we can go to things like self-managing teams or self-organizing teams. So we're talking about the starting place to create this star on the rising of self-organizing or self-managing teams that are autonomous. It starts with responsible people. And all of us can immediately start on this tomorrow. It's an evolutionary journey to high performance. So this is the evolution of high performance. Right? Responsible people, it starts with us. It's what each of us doing our work to show up a little bit more responsibly. When all of us do a little part, we're on our journey. So I'm going to ask you to stand and discuss, not in triads, but in small groups. I think this is our last stand and discuss thing. How could a shift in your behavior inspire others to become more responsible? Think about it. If you create a shift in your behavior, how can that inspire others? And what can you personally focus on to support people evolving in your organization? What can you do to help others? So what can you do to shift in yourself, and what can you do to help others? So again, this is a meetup. I'll invite you to stand and meet new people, get into small groups, 2, 3, 4 people, introduce yourself, and then go through these questions. What we just shared is about moving beyond self-organizing teams for how to energize people. So this is what the whole premise is that it's a beautiful idea. It's even like a kind of a okay-ish star on the horizon, but starting there doesn't help us. Starting with people who are responsible, starting with ourselves, is the way to lead to interrelated responsible teams, which may eventually lead us to having organizing succeed. Now, one option, this is a book Audrey, my wife and co-trainer, and I wrote together, Emotional Science, is a very powerful book which we wrote specifically to help leaders become more responsible. And really, it's focused on working through our emotional charges. Have you ever seen someone with an emotional reaction? Yeah? Yeah, in Star Wars we say, reaction is the dark side, right? So we understand that reaction is very damaging. This actually gives us a very practical way to step-by-step understand what's happening within our emotional system and debug it and actually overcome it. The other book, Leadership 314, it's in progress. It's about 85% written. And that's right now the only way to get that is in our certified agile leadership training to get this information. But there's a whole bunch of stuff about how do we apply everything we're speaking about here and more into creating and really helping organizations use some of this wisdom into supporting an agile transformation, to supporting leadership and having the mindset and understanding they need to support the people, right? Because managers don't need this training, the Scrum training, right? That's like very mechanical. They don't understand how to grow people, how to evolve a powerful structure and network that can grow and evolve to something like the new agile, which is teal, right? To support having people work in these very different ways of working. So that's the core of our work. We actually have some giveaways. So the way we're going to do this, we have 2 books to give away. One is an Agile Transformation Survival Guide. If you want this, you can also get a free download on our website. The other one is the book Emotional Science. So we're going to give away to 3 different people both books. And the way it's going to work is like this. We're going to take some nominations. If you'd like to nominate someone who shared something that you found was very insightful, I'll ask you to share what was your big insight, and then nominate the person. I'll give the person you're nominating the books, right? So you're here to nominate someone else. Okay? So would anyone like to nominate someone to share, this is the insight they received during this time that was very, very helpful for them in their growth? We'd like to nominate someone.
I'd like to nominate Claire Abu. She gave me a bit of insight on a different way of dealing with some contractual things when organisations are split into silos and things are subcontracted and things like that. So I've got to make that.
Great, thank you. Can you please give this to her? Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Claire. Good work. She's one of our Calwin grads. So. All right, can someone nominate someone else? You can just share, yes. Say who you're nominating, what your insight is.
I just really loved the metaphor which he shared, cells and tissues. And, I was thinking of something similar myself around ecosystems, but I just think her metaphor trumped what I had in mind.
Great.
I have something to disclose.
Wait.
I cannot take credit for that. It was Manal's analogy. There she is. It was her idea, so I cannot redirect the nomination. You're
Wonderful, that's fine.
It was Manal's analogy and metaphor.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to present the books to both these people. Okay? All right. All right. Thank you. Okay, so how to continue the journey? Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Download the free book on our website. Some of this is available through blog posts. I try to post as much as I can, but not everything's up there. And really, if you want help with leadership evolution, organizational evolution, that's the core of what we do. It's about helping people develop evolutionary capabilities. So not about giving some growth, helping some growth, but developing ongoing growth. That's what we're all about, to create sustainable journeys towards high performance and personal evolution to create the essence of Agile. I'm going to take a few questions before we close. Take a couple of questions people might have.
What's the significance of 314?
Can you use the microphone?
Sorry. What's the significance of 314 and changing the name?
That's a great question. So the 314, you may have heard of this funny number called pi, 3.141519, which talks about the timeless principles of mathematics. What we're talking about is what are the timeless principles. This is our company's shifting from Agiltrix to Shift 314 in the middle of this transition. It's really about, we're all about helping people create an extraordinary shift in their personal self, in their organizations, and how we approach change itself. So it's all about the big shift and timeless essentials of that shift. Yeah. Other questions?
Thanks. Do you have any tips for people who are in line management positions performing as Theory X or only through deep coaching?
Okay. So is this people who you work with or report to you, or what's the situation?
Work with.
People you work with, yeah. So the question about creating the shift is, well, how can we help people shift from Theory X to Theory Y? We see people not operating so well, and we desire that they show up better, yes? Yeah. Well, my question is, well, what do they want? Yeah, you may have heard this joke, you know, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? You know, one, but the light bulb really has to want to change, right? You know, like, so really let's keep them cut. Okay, let's try this one. The core of what we're talking about is about cultivating other people's desire. So the biggest success that we've seen through our work is really that people start showing up very differently and being very successful. And people go, oh, I noticed you're successful. Like, what are you doing? How did you learn how to do that? That's actually what we found be the biggest indicator. So really, and this comes as a shift because we're not really conditioned to operate this way, is to start focusing on how we can show up better and stop worrying about everyone else. That'll actually help them. So again, you know, I don't know if anyone has a partner. The way to get them to do something is to stop talking to them about it. And just be totally okay with them, accept them exactly the way they are, and just be totally okay whether they do it or not. You may have seen this in the movie The Matrix. Remember the movie The Matrix? Remember how Morpheus says, Neo, you're the one, you must take the red pill. Oh wait, that didn't happen. No. It wasn't. He said, there's a blue pill, there's a red pill. It's your freedom and your choice, what you want for yourself. That's the secret, is to give people freedom and to honor them to give that freedom. Because that's what is required to create that deep shift, that deep desire to create success. All right. Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. I just want to reflect on one of the things that we've seen here is that we inspire through the behavior of yourself, and it starts with the leader. I was just curious, like, how do you know that you inspire others? You know, you exhibit the behavior, you think you're behaving, you know, correctly. How do you know that you have inspired someone? You know, what that kind of things?
What do you think?
Well, I think, you know, you probably will see some behavior change in the others. But, you know, behavior is not a black and white, right? So it's like, how do you know that it's yourself who inspired it, or is it just came from somewhere else, or like, you know, things like that?
That's a really great question. So there are many answers to this. I'd probably say the simplest one is that people just start copying what you do. right? If you're doing something that people admire, they'll start copying what you do. And you'll notice, oh, they're doing the same thing that I do. That's helpful. And you go, but see, the thing is, once we stop caring about who gets credit and whether they're copying me or they just figured it out, that's actually part of the secret, is to have that humility to say, well, I just want people to be successful, right? It's our attachment and need for recognition that stops us from helping the brilliance of others shine. Like, I know this is part of one of my own leadership edges, where I'm on my leadership journey. Very practically is sometimes I struggle with this. Right? You know, I want the recognition, I want to be the smartest guy in the room, blah, 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 all this ego stuff goes on. Even though like there's another part of me that just wants people to be extraordinary and amazing and let go of any need or recognition for credit or acknowledgement. Right? So this is the truth of where I am on my journey. And this is what we struggle with, because what's more important? Think about it. It's much more important that you get credit or that someone is extraordinary and makes your workplace and the world a better place. And that is the essence, and that's part of our growth journey. Because once we're showing up theory-why and we feel good and we feel resourced and we just want to help others and make the world a better place really, and it stops being about us and our ego, we start getting some distance from it, about needing to feel important and so on, that's where we can really have profound impact. And I can tell you from my own journey, it is such a profound reward. I mean, Audrey and I have this real great honor to train people around the world, like leaders, managers, senior agile coaches. It's so rewarding to see people popping and getting this spark and this idea. So the stepping away from that need for it to be about us, about our success, is really, really, really beautiful. So does it matter? If we do things because it's the right thing to do, and some people do it and some people don't, that's okay. Yeah, thank you for that question. So we're going to close now. I just want to thank you so much for all your participation and attention. You've done a great job meeting others. I was watching you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate coming to Moo in particular. Thank you, Claire, for hosting us. And really appreciate the London community welcoming us so warmly. Thank you.